2 minutes after 7, I guess we'll start the meeting. I might be a little rough tonight. Haven't been doing this for about a month, but I think we can rock and roll pretty good. So anyway, first order of business is if you please rise and pledge allegiance to the flag with me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we have an agenda this evening. Does anybody want to change it? Or are we going from what we have printed? I'm glad to see you. I came back to an audience anyway. The last meeting we didn't have a couple of them. So welcome anyway. Public comment. We have a public. You don't want to comment yet, do you? You have your individual issues to address. Okay. Next item: approve and accept our minutes from Monday, September 25th, 2023, as presented. What's your pleasure on the minutes?
I'll move we approve them as printed.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve and accept our minutes from September 25th. Any discussion, errors, omissions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstentions, it's unanimously approved. Next item, approve and accept the village warrants through Thursday, September 28th, 2023. What's your pleasure on our warrants?
I would make that move. Items
And I'll second.
96 and 97.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve and accept the village warrants. Any discussion? Adam, you don't have any
I
questions
got
on the
nothing.
warrant?
I got nothing.
Okay,
It's only two of them. There's only two.
all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstentions, that motion is carried unanimously. So this is not for me right now?
No, this is mine.
Okay,
I need an extra room.
okay. Item number 7, discussion with Karen Sentoff regarding our Route 78 interchange up here. I'm assuming this the interstate.
Indeed.
Welcome, Karen.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
And you have an associate with you, is that Kyle? Is he with?
Kyle is with the Regional Planning Commission, so I will introduce the both of us when we get to that point. And I do have some slides that I think Diane is working to share. And while she's doing that, just really quickly, I'll introduce myself, Karen Sentoff with VHB. I'm a transportation planner and engineer with our group out of the South Burlington office. So pretty local here, and really here to hopefully talk to you all and have some discussion around exit 21, the northbound ramps, and the intersection with Vermont 78. It has been a project that's sort of been in slow development up to this point, and so we are working very closely with the Agency of Transportation to hopefully fill any gaps in that project definition and get it plugged into the new prioritization process for getting projects funding for design and construction. So that's really what we're here to talk about tonight. So tick through really quickly what I'm hoping to speak with you all about. So a little bit about this project refinement process that we find ourselves in right now and that prioritization process that the agency is taking on. Talk a little bit about the study area and some project background, the existing conditions. I know you all are very familiar with that intersection, so hoping to pick your brains a bit about what goes on there so that we have a really full understanding of what's happening on the ground. And then talk about a draft purpose and need that hopefully we'll use throughout this process to really use as our anchor as we evaluate alternatives and how this intersection should be treated. and then hopefully open it up for some discussion on, what your thoughts are, what the local concerns are, and then some next steps in this process. So working with, obviously the agency, those are the folks who are holding up this work at this moment and funding this effort. We're working with the Regional Planning Commission. Kyle is here. He is the transportation representative from the Northwest Regional Planning Commission, and has been in collaboration with us from the start of this effort. We went and talked to the select board in Swanton a couple of weeks ago, had a very similar discussion to this, and now are here this evening to talk to the trustees and anyone who wants to chime in from the public on this effort. So a little bit about the prioritization process that we find ourselves in, just a little bit of background. The agency sort of revamped how they prioritize projects, so gone are the days of sort of legacy projects sitting and never really, moving. And now we're really in this prioritization scheme where there's asset-driven projects, so those projects that come into the sort of funding funnel because paving needs to be done and it's in poor condition, or a bridge really needs to be replaced or something like that. And then there's this sort of regionally driven approach or mechanism to getting into the prioritization process, and that's really leveraging the folks at the RPC and the transportation advisory committees to say, hey, what are those local projects that are really sort of a concern at the local level or the regional level that need to be plugged into this process as well? What are those priorities, and how do we get them the funding that they need for design and construction? And through this refinement process, we've basically taken this plug of projects, or actually in the second phase of this, all these regionally identified projects, and really trying to hone in on where they stand in the sort of project development process. So as you can imagine, there are projects that have come to us that, the town's been really active, there's been scoping done, maybe they've done some preliminary design, and then there's projects that have come through this mechanism that are just, we know there's a problem here and we know we need to fix it, but we're not quite sure what the right solution is. And so we sort of run the full gamut and are figuring out for each project, what are those gaps and how do we help in this process to fill them, and then how do we make the recommendations that the agency needs to hear about exactly what the next steps are to really get these projects off the ground. So for the intersection that we're focused on here, we're looking at the interchange at exit 21 off of 89. I know you're all familiar with where that is and how it is sort of a critical component in the network connectivity in the region. Obviously, Vermont 78 connects over to places west and over into New York, over into Highgate and further afield to the east. Obviously, also connects to US 7 in downtown Swanton, and then the 89 corridor and that critical piece of infrastructure that connects to Canada to the north and to places further afield to the south. So definitely an important piece of infrastructure. Some of the conversation that we have with the select board around the highway in Canada and the increase in truck traffic that we anticipate, recognizing that that's sort of the first stop for folks as they come down across the border and want to hop off and get gas and whatnot. So recognize the sort of importance of this interchange in the grand scheme of the network. Really dialing in the project that came to us via the Transportation Advisory Committee at the RPC, holding up these regionally prioritized projects, is really focused on the northbound ramps and the intersection with 78. So we're sort of looking at that singular intersection in this process. And we just want to sort of think about that in the grand scheme of things. One of the talking points with the select board was really understanding how that works, both as a standalone intersection and then, in conjunction with the intersections around it and in the context that it's in, and how that interchange sort of works all together. So the project, was really identified by the issues of queuing. It sounds like there are some periods of time during the day, occasionally where there is spillback onto the interstate. Obviously, that is a safety concern, and certainly you are constrained with what you can do for an off-ramp there, just based on the bridge that's right there, right before the exit. So definitely came to us by way of those queuing issues and it being a safety concern. This is one of those projects that didn't have any prior scoping, so we're sort of gathering a lot of the information that we would at the beginning of a scoping effort, and really working to help define what the issues are, what the problems are, and then start to think about what potential solutions might be. Some of this background research that we've done so far, there's been a couple of road safety audits, one that was really focused on the interchange and one that was focused on sort of that stretch of Vermont 78 in the vicinity of the interchange. We look at the municipal plan and just, are looking at other resources to make sure that, this is a regional priority, that the town and the region are pointing to this as being an issue that needs to be focused on. And then a few of the other more recent adjacent projects that we've been looking at, the sidewalk preliminary plans and sidewalk scoping study, looking at making some pedestrian connectivity through that area and recognizing that need. One of the needs that certainly came out of the road safety audit in 2008. All right, so looking a little bit at the existing conditions, like I said, the queuing issues and the spillback onto 89 are what sort of raised the red flags and sounds like held this up as a regional priority project. And so from our perspective, certainly that is the case. We have looked at some of the traffic data that was collected there. Fortunately, the traffic data is from pre-pandemic, but we've adjusted it based on what we sort of think is happening at the moment. And looked at, we do see pretty significant queues when we actually, examine what's going on there and look at the capacity analyses. Certainly some issues, when we're looking at it from like a simulation standpoint. And, definitely limited on what we can do sort of on the interstate side with that bridge being right there. But thinking a little more carefully about what we can do once we get closer into the intersection. A couple of just things to highlight in terms of safety. We did do just like a desktop review of the last 5 years. 6 crashes with 2 injury crashes were identified at that intersection, which just is greater than similar exits on I-89, so that definitely raised a flag for us. And in some of the risk work that the agency is doing, it does categorize that intersection as a primary risk for left turn crashes at a stop-controlled intersection. So it's sort of flagged for the agency as well as being, a intersection with some safety risk. And like I said, we did take a look at the 2016 data that is available for turning movement counts at that location, and looked at the capacity analysis and the queuing that we would expect for AM and PM peak periods. So that's just the table that you're seeing there. And then just as an exercise to sort of understand what that might look like, and again, this is not accounting for any sort of local growth or anything like that, but just sort of the generalized growth factors that the agency has based on the type of roadway, the type of interchange, et cetera. Look at, adjusting for today and what it looks like today, and then adjusting out for 20 years of growth, background growth, and understanding sort of what's happening there. Now, it's my understanding that there's a lot of activity happening in the area, there's a lot of investment happening in the area, so we might want to think a little more carefully and dial in on what those growth projections look like. But this gives us a sense that, in the PM peak hour, even today, we're looking at, 300 plus feet of queuing on that ramp during the PM peak hour, which I think that ramp is only 600 or so feet. So you're talking about, folks having to slow down and are hitting the back of the queue pretty quickly when they're coming off the interstate. That definitely raises a red flag for us in terms of the safety condition there. And then obviously, going out to a 20-year traffic projection, we're gonna be, you know, backing up to closer to the end of that ramp with that end of keel. So one of the things in this process that we're really trying to dial in on is, you know, coming up with a purpose and need statement that is really gonna be the sort of that anchor, that grounding purpose and need for evaluating various alternatives, and then looking at those solutions and determining sort of what fixes the problem, what makes this better. And so our purpose, our draft purpose and need statement for this project is, and I'll read it out because I think the wordsmithing is pretty important here, making sure that we're sort of capturing what's happening. But we see that the purpose of the project at the intersection of I-89 exit 21 northbound ramps and Vermont 78 is to improve traffic operations and safety by reducing queuing and spillback onto I-89 in current and future traffic scenarios. And the needs are really sort of the compelling need for the project. The needs for the improvements at this location are identified by the higher than average crashes relative to similar exits on I-89 and observed queuing on the interstate off-ramp. So really thinking about, you know, that statement as sort of our grounding statement for this project, and that will be sort of carried forward through this process. We sort of present this draft purpose and need to you now. We welcome feedback on it and input on it. And then, you know, hopefully when and we'll get to this in next steps, but hopefully when we circle back with the community, we can get an endorsement on that purpose and need statement and include that in our refinement reporting. Yeah.
As a longtime user of that exit 20, I don't believe has the traffic that exit 21 has.
Mm-hmm.
Yet that has a traffic light and it has dedicated lanes.
Yep.
That seems like a bare minimum for a fix for here.
I hear you. Yeah, and I actually just pulled off the interstate at that location because I had the same observation,
Okay.
thinking about what that looks like compared to
Yeah,
what's happening
and
up
again,
here.
a traffic light could be programmed so during those high traffic days or high traffic hours that it's working. The rest of the time it could be on caution.
Yep.
Because the rest of the day it's pretty normal. It's pretty simple and pretty easy. But there is a lot of potential things that are happening there. The airport is completing a big change, which is going to facilitate a lot more business up there, which is going to mean more traffic on the interstate and more business at exit 21.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple of state things we're thinking about right at the exit here. So there is a need to well, maybe I'm just gonna say modernize, but make it more efficient during high use times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've got another old one that I've thought about for years, but there really ought to be an interchange on 78 west to the interstate. I've said this a zillion times, but that would get, I mean, the number of multi-axle trucks that go through the village of Swanton and get it on up the interstate and travel down 78 west is phenomenal. There's been numbers as high as 1,800, some going west, some going east, but the number's probably a little less than that these days, but it's substantial. So if the number of trucks could be left out of the village, because we have another checkpoint down here where 78 meets Route 7 at the park.
Mm-hmm.
Those 54-foot trucks they rule the road down there.
Sure.
And it's amazing we haven't had more trouble, but, so there's outside the box thoughts as well. I mean, that would be catastrophic cost-wise. It's another bridge and a lot of highway and a lot of wetland, but it's something that ought to be always talked about because at some point it's probably gonna make sense.
Understood.
And I think just to echo Chris, you know, you had spoken about the interstate itself and trying to avoid having, or either not being able to or avoiding it. I mean, in my little mind, I would think you'd probably want to start a third lane just before the bridge going up. So you'd expand that bridge out, and again, taking into account everything that's going to happen. I think that's something that should be looked at.
Sure, sure.
You know, and I agree with the left-hand turn, it's a nightmare. Even when it's 1 o'clock in the morning, it's probably a nightmare down there. But if you're looking for a great example, drive north about 4:30, 4:45. And you'll probably sit on the bridge.
Yep.
Waiting for traffic.
Yep. One of the things we did here, just thinking about sort of time of day, which I think you both brought up, is just the lighting at that intersection seems to be pretty dimly lit, and even just some lighting might be a step in the right direction.
Agreed.
General agreement with that
Yep.
there's sort of dimly
Agreed.
lit interchange there.
Yep.
That lighting setup will have to be pretty well fine-tuned, because there's a lot of traffic going on 78 in conjunction with people coming off of the interstate. So if you address the exit ramp issue, you might cause issues on 78. Like school gets out, school activities get out, buses come down through there. Like Chris says, you've got the trucks are always there anyway. And hopefully when the Canadians finish Route 35 to the border, that'll cut some of the truck traffic down, but we can't count on that.
Sure.
The light, I guess, is probably the critical issue, and then the timing of the light.
Definitely.
And other than changing the interchange, which won't happen in our lifetime anyway, I mean, so there's not even a chance of considering that. You have to improve that ramp somehow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that was one of the questions that I posed to the select board, and would do the same here. If I was hearing from, from the trustees, from the select board, from the community, that the whole interchange really needs an overhaul, and that's really we would make a different recommendation out of the process that we're in, but it's sounding to me like there's enough happening at that intersection alone that needs to be addressed at this juncture, that, that's really needs to be the focus and the recommendation coming out of this
It needs to be
process.
addressed, but I think also you need to look out 20 years.
Yep.
At the whole interchange. I think with the amount of growth that's going to happen, the entire interchange is probably gonna have to be reviewed. And, I mean, I'd hate to see the money spent on just one ramp.
Yep.
When, the scope probably should have been, again, hindsight, should have been the entire interchange.
Yep.
But if we can get the ramp straightened
Right.
out, we don't care about the interchange.
Right.
Because exit 17's been crying for an interchange change for 25 years, and they haven't got it yet. So we aren't gonna ask for that.
True.
We'll ask for the ramp improvements.
First things first.
Good point, good point.
There is no choice that I think the board here all agrees that something should be done.
Yep.
There is a traffic problem, obviously, from time to time. As a matter of fact, having lived here for a while, after 2:30 in the afternoon, if I'm coming north, I get off in St. Albans and take alternate routes with the village. Because it's, well, a pain, shall
I
I
mean,
say.
and it's scary when you're backed up onto the bridge.
Well,
You're
yes.
sitting on the bridge, waiting for,
I would say,
Cars to go.
I've seen it backed up 200-300 yards. I don't know, I didn't really good at measuring, but
So-
what's that on the bridge?
What does this section of road, how is it prioritized by the state of Vermont right now? Because they change I'm on a DOT, I was on a DOT with regional planning, and they have a priority list every year and you put on the priority list what you want done, and they put you in a certain place, and before the next year comes around, they change your priority. So, how serious is the priority of this road with the state of Vermont?
That is a really good question. So we are on just our second phase of these regionally driven projects being part of this new prioritization process. With each of those projects, I know they're being assigned a project number. They are being funded for this preliminary refinement process. And then it's our intent to report back to the agency, and my understanding from the folks that I'm dealing with at the agency, that they're looking to really program these projects pretty immediately with whatever the next step is in the process. Now, for some projects, that's gonna be a scoping study. For some projects, that's gonna be the next phase of design, and really try to program those dollars with all of these regionally driven projects over the next handful of years with whatever that next step is. So, you know, I'm encouraged that every one of these that I work on has a project number, and it's, you know, I'm seeing them get programmed as soon as we're reporting back to the agency. So I'm encouraged by the process, but understandably, you know, I'm in this world all the time. These things tend to move kind of slow, so I can understand the sentiment. Any other thoughts on the intersection itself, on the process that we're in, on, you know, any questions for where we're headed? I do have a slide on next steps, so I do want to sort of lay those out, but I want to make sure that if anyone else has any input on, you know, what's happening at the intersection and wants their voice heard.
Is this possibly slated to be a DDI at some point?
That is a great question. I think if we were having a conversation of looking at a full interchange, and looking at what needs to be done sort of at the interchange scale, I think it would be a different conversation. It's certainly, you know, we'll see what happens with exit 16 and how it goes, but it's certainly an option, especially in issues of safety and those left turns.
So I see most of the state of Vermont is starting to scale into DDI interchanges throughout, and I've seen 5 or 6 proposed, so I don't know if that's part of this process.
Maybe when we find ourselves in 15, 20 years with the growth that's slated for the area, that might be a conversation, but I don't know if at this juncture that's on the table for this.
Can you help us out with your acronym, DDI, please?
It's diverging diamond interchange.
Okay.
It's where you swap your traffic on the other side of the road, essentially to get people on and off without having that possible intersect of traffic. So.
Yeah. When you said exit 16, I was picking up what you were laying down. Okay.
And another comment too to Mr. Leach, where you have the corner by the free library. Has there ever been a thought of widening that turn for trucks to transit that? Doesn't mean they sit there for minutes on end, backing up traffic. Is there ever a thought of that, possibly, in the future?
That's been discussed in the past, and we meet with extreme opposition
Okay.
because of the park, which is sacred, and the library, which is more so.
And it's interesting.
A lot of people.
For verification, I think you all are aware of this. Karen is our point of contact on that $375,000 downtown fix that we're doing, and that is one of the fixes, but it's a three-way stop at this point.
Yeah.
And that'll happen in early 2025, I believe, by the
Yep.
time we get to that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Widening of it won't be in my lifetime, I don't think.
Okay. Thank you.
So, maybe you're gonna bring this up, but you said, you're talking about crosswalks at this intersection. Is that in your scope of study, something about the crosswalks?
Well, if there is a need that is raised as part of this process for crossings at that location. If we're contemplating signalization as an option,
But
later in
that's-
this process or in scoping.
That's not in your chain of events right now.
Not at the
Okay,
moment.
I don't, forget I said anything then.
Are you picking up what he's laying down? Okay.
And I would just say no roundabout, please.
It's fair. I think as a matter of a scoping study, they have to at least say it's not feasible, but.
Right.
I think the easiest thing at this point in time, in my mind, is a simple installation of a traffic light.
And I would say,
That'd be the cheapest, and I think it would work.
And lanes for left and right turns so that everybody isn't behind each other. At least you got a chance to
I think you can do that pretty reasonably.
spread it out.
yeah, so I will say that in looking at the preliminary traffic data that we do have available to us at this juncture, I mean, it seems that a signal is warranted. I understand that it's pretty wide at the end of that ramp, so folks are sort of using it as two
They are.
lanes, even though it's not designated as such. Some of the other stuff that came up in the road safety audit, there are some wide shoulders on 78 that can sometimes be confused for an extra traffic lane or some activity that maybe isn't warranted in a shoulder. So there are some of those sort of things. Some of the other stuff that we've just observed or been privy to from other folks' observations, the use of frontage road, and some of the sort of left turns that occur right off of the intersection and into that access is definitely something we're thinking about. The road safety audit pointed to potentially a raised median there to sort of clean up some of the activity that's happening. So that may be an option. I don't see anyone jumping at that not being a great option. So there have been some ideas thrown out on the table of what the potential solution might be. And what we'd like to do is, we're basically gathering all this information for our reporting. What we'd like to do is come back and hopefully talk to the trustees and the select board and the community about what some of those alternatives might be, what some of those solutions might be, and ultimately I think we're out of this process probably recommending a supplemental scoping study to just dig in and make sure that whatever solution the town and the village decide on is the right solution for carrying forward into the next phase of the process.
In an almost perfect world, what would a time frame look like in starting the project, boots on the ground, the whole 9 yards, and then completion?
That's a great question. So I know that they are looking at funding October and into November for how they're gonna sort of program all of these regionally prioritized projects. We're reporting on the first phase now, and then we'll wrap up this reporting, and hopefully if we can come back to the community in about a month, we'll wrap up the reporting hopefully by the end of the calendar year. So that'll be sort of this refinement process. If our recommendation out of this process is a scoping study, it's probably about another calendar year to just make sure that the due diligence as part of that process happens. Ideally, those funds would be programmed pretty quickly as soon as we sort of hand them our report. And then from there, depending on the recommendations out of scoping, I would say, the opportunity to be programmed in sort of that next fiscal year's design work is pretty good at this juncture. I mean, my hunch is we're about 3 years out from design construction.
Can we afford to wait? I only say that from a safety standpoint. We haven't had a death yet, but
It's a good point, and I think some of what we can use this tool, this sort of refinement process tool for, is making some of those really, low-hanging fruit recommendations, like the lighting issue that came up, like some of the other stuff that is just, maybe it's a simple restriping if you're out there anyway, or, whatever it might be, some hatching, to get you to that, slightly safer state, while we're in this process, to really hold up the right design for what needs to happen at the intersection.
One more thought. This can't be a really unique problem here. I mean, if it were me, my engineering background, I would do something simple like look at Google Earth and follow the interstates around all of New England and look at all the intersections. And find one that looks like this one and see what they did to fix it. Just as an idea to quickly, move forward with some really good ideas.
Yep.
One of the things that frustrates the living hell out of us as trustees is the amount of time and these expensive studies sometimes that I won't say they're not necessary, but there's a more efficient way to get to the solution. Some things are truly an issue, like I'm sure the traffic study in Winooski, what's going on at that interchange took some time, but it's gonna be fine when it's done, But this one seems simple, and there must be other ramps that this problem has jumped up on, and there may be some really good ideas out there that haven't come, haven't happened, rather than sit around and get 10 people to think about it and write about it and do whatever they do about it. Move to a solution, move like a businessman would do, not like a politician. Go and find solutions quicker. Just a thought. Thank you. I think you did a nice job.
Thanks.
And to add to that, they have hired your firm to make recommendations, and after you give them your recommendations, they have to do a scoping study to see if you did your job right. Just like Chris says, it seems like a duplicate, frustrating process. You're here to ask our opinion, and you're putting a program together, and you present that to them, and then you're gonna study it again. So we're back another 2 years. But I understand that's the way the system works.
I think in this process, if everyone were to say, the signal is the right solution, the traffic signal warrants come through, all of those pieces fall into place, the select board agrees and the trustees agree, and that was the one singular solution, I think the scoping process as a formality would be, here is the alternative. But I do think we have to sort of do that, and I call it supplemental scoping because we are doing a lot of the feasibility component of it as part of this process. And the next phase is gonna be the formal, yes, the community agrees, everyone's on board, there's no project adversaries, we've identified any constraints or challenges to doing that in design and making sure we've laid all those things out so that there's clear understanding going into that design effort, and then it's let's hit the ground running for design. So I see this process a little bit as greasing those wheels for that next phase and making sure that that goes quickly and smoothly, hopefully. So just really quickly on next steps. We are hoping to come back and have a second public meeting. Hopefully, we can coordinate with the trustees and the select board and the community for community input. We'll talk about some of those alternatives. We'll do some due diligence between now and then on what we think are some good options, what some of those low-hanging fruit recommendations could be. And we'll want to confirm that purpose and need statement and hopefully get an endorsement from folks on the purpose and need for this effort. We'll start to identify some of those project constraints or challenges. I mean, some of the stuff that we really want to understand, are there folks that are going to come out of the woodwork and say, no way, no how, you can't have a signal here? That's sort of the stuff we want to figure out at this juncture. And then hopefully we'll get an endorsement from folks to advance this project to an alternatives evaluations and like I said, sort of a supplemental scoping process. We'll draft that all into a report and feed it back to the agency, and then they'll be ready to, program this project in sort of the next phase. So that's our plan from here on out. Any questions?
What's your time frame for that, just so we can get an idea?
We'd love to be back in about a month. Ideally, that puts us sometime in November. I know November gets really short with the Thanksgiving holiday, so, I've worked with Brian getting the select board coordination on that side, so hopefully we can figure out what might work towards the end of, maybe in November or even early December if we have to push to early December to come back to the community.
So if the trustees are okay, I'll coordinate with Brian, do a joint meeting, have it here, community forum.
Perfect. Yeah.
All right.
Good.
That would be great.
I think the sooner the better too.
Yep.
Excellent.
That's good.
Well, I appreciate your time and for the discussion, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a month or
In a
two.
month.
Hopefully a month. That would be great.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. So, next item on the agenda, Brian Benoit of the Northwest Vermont Riders, Vermont ATV Sportsmen's Association request for permission to create a trail on village property off of Route 7.
Yes.
And Brian's joined by Tim Cardy. Did I get it right, Cardy?
Yes.
So I'll preface this, if you don't mind. You have a map diagram in front of you. These gentlemen came in representing the Northwest Vermont Riders, part of Vermont ATV Sportsmen's Association. And they pride themselves on the fact that their association does it right. So instead of all of the negativity we see in front of us all the time related to four-wheelers, right, fair, these gentlemen are trying to identify a trail to keep people a little more off the road and behaving responsibly. So the red line depicts what, if you go up from St. Albans Road, Route 7, that's the entrance to our stump dump. And that road, as you know, continues all the way down and connects just past, in yellow highlighted is where Vermont Gas has their stuff, to Beebe Road. So these gentlemen are simply asking, can they officially get permission to utilize this, make maybe some slight improvements in some low spots for, again, the much more professional use of four-wheelers. Did I say that pretty well?
Yes.
Okay.
Better than you could.
No, that's not true. But they came in and I said, I think the trustees would like to hear and obviously weigh in on this.
Yeah,
It'll keep people off Route 7,
yeah, right.
even though you're not supposed to be there, but they'll fly down it anyways.
Just give them a legal alternative route.
Right.
So.
A safety thing too, less they're on the road, less chances of they're gonna have a vehicle collision.
Have we got permission to go through or around Vermont Gas Systems property?
We own this entire section of property.
Okay.
So they wouldn't be going through where Vermont Gas has,
Fenced off.
correct. That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Just on the side of it.
And furthermore, if you look on the St. Albans Road, the Route 7 end of it to the north, you can see what looks like a fairly well-worn ATV trail. That's even worse. That goes through wetlands,
Yeah.
which we also own,
Right.
and that there's a gas line through.
Yeah,
And what we would like to do is if you make this a well-known trail, they're gonna avoid that,
Yeah.
which would be nice.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll hang our VASA signs so people know where to go, where to stay off, or how fast to go.
And our stump dump won't be a problem there.
No, not at all.
We'll go right by that.
Yeah, yes, basically a road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's sort of a trail there now, isn't there?
Yep, yeah, there's
Yeah.
a trail
You can
there.
drive a dump truck down that trail.
Yeah.
You get to the ditch.
Well, yeah,
That's where I have to stop the other day, that's where I had to stop. That's why I asked you
but you
guys.
saw the ditch we were talking about where we put the bridge.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Do you think snowmobilers would use this in the winter, do you think?
They're welcome to.
Yeah.
How about dirt bikes?
Well, that's up to you guys. If they're not all of our machines are supposed to be registered, insured, everything.
Yeah,
Dirt bikes aren't gonna be.
that's the way snowmobiles are supposed to be too.
Right,
Yeah.
right, snowmobiles, the bridge will be wide enough for them too that we built.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be an issue with us.
I would have no objection to this.
Yeah. And I've talked to Brian Rell, I'm waiting for an answer to go across BB Road and then come out down on his property, down across, to go straight up Woods Hill Road, so that would eliminate the whole part of Route 7 that we're using.
You guys, we already gave you permission to run around up by Project 10, by, forget,
Fire Street.
wait
That's a
till we
rail
stop
trail.
them, that's a real trail?
Rail trail goes
Yeah, I thought I remember once we had, I've driven over there and seen what I think are four-wheeler tracks through there.
That's probably something some punks made.
up there.
Because we can't.
I
we
mean,
can't
some
be on
young
rail trails.
kids.
But it's not, no, I think this is fine. It doesn't run by anybody's property, there's nothing there to vandalize,
Yeah,
you know, I mean,
It increases safety.
yeah,
For the
and it gets the four-wheeler traffic away from things that could be damaged.
right.
No, I'm fine
Anybody
with
else want an input on this, or?
I'm good. I think it's
Yeah,
a
I
good
don't-
idea. If you can solve the problem coming in from my gate, I'd be even happier.
That's my next step.
That's on the other end of town.
That's
Our
where I
meeting's
am.
on the 19th.
We're gonna try to get a hold of,
We need a
what's his
motion
name,
on this, or?
Matt,
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
Game
we'll make a motion.
Oh, I know
Yeah.
you're talking, yeah.
and I know their budget's a little slim, but see, you know, maybe somehow we can work with them somehow to get some of the bad stuff stopped.
But I think only the sheriff is allowed to stop.
Game warden's supposed to control that.
Yeah, they're supposed to.
Well, then I would make the motion that we allow, as the proposed Vermont ATV sportsman's use of the village property as proposed would be acceptable.
And I'll second.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second to allow the Vermont ATV Sportsmen's Association to create a trail across the village property between Route 7 and the BB Road. Did I say that right?
I think so.
Any more discussion?
We could enter this map
Does that
into
sound good to you
the minutes
guys?
if you want.
Yes.
What's that?
We could enter this map into the minutes if you
Yeah.
want to.
Copy of this.
So,
There's no additional liability to the village, is there here? They
No,
already- they already
honestly,
use
honestly,
it.
they're doing it right now, but
Yeah.
the wrong element's doing it right now. This is gonna make it much more,
Yeah, again, I would just bring that up, that's fine.
okay, the motion set and seconded. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's carried unanimously. How about it, fellas?
Thank
We
you.
had a question about, building a bridge, it's gonna be fairly long, probably gonna be 20 feet, whatever. We're gonna get some if you don't have them, but do you have any old, like your old telephone poles that you take down, things like that, or do you guys destroy them?
We'll check with Dwayne tomorrow,
yeah, we
let you
can
know.
check and follow up.
Yeah.
Because we do have access to some, but they're just farther away, but if we could take some off your hands that you have to destroy anyway,
Yeah, I think we can
transportation would be a lot
help you out
easier.
with that. Yeah.
We do get some in, so check with them.
Sometimes they're
Yeah.
splintered.
Bill will check
Can we
it,
get you to build it?
so.
That's gonna be
We
half,
actually might be willing to help a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll see.
that's gonna be half the fun of it though.
Yeah. How far is the bridge you gotta build from the stump dump?
Oh, it's probably.
Quite a ways down. So it's at
A
this,
couple hundred yards.
it's this bend right here.
Yeah, it's way down, it's past both the cornfields. That way just, because where the four-wheelers go now, they got it all rutted up.
Yep.
So if we just go across, it won't bother the brook going through and
Yeah, there's a runoff that runs through there.
There's a
bit.
little low spot.
Yeah.
It
Good
drains,
deal. Okay.
drains from
We'll let you know
Route 7, I
what
think.
we can help you with, and if you've got any questions, just come back to the office and check it out.
Great.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Enjoy.
Good evening.
Good luck.
You guys wanna go for a ride, just get hold of me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, have a good night.
Good night.
Karen, we'll talk soon on our other project as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, item number 9, approve and adopt our wastewater treatment plant bond vote warning for November 7th, 2023 vote. Yep, that's been coming.
So, I was
Yes.
going through the paperwork, and I actually need the motion to state that the resolutions adopted and approved, as well as the warning and the ballot.
If that's the appropriate motion, then I will make it.
Thank you.
And I will second.
Okay,
Did you
anyway,
put up the letter of intent too?
that was the motion. Any more discussion on the motion?
No, we've been working on this for a while.
Is that separate?
If not, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So we're approving the motion unanimously, so.
You're gonna post it
That-
tomorrow?
What-
Yes, yeah, so this is just signed by me.
And you need an
Can
approval.
we probably should amend the motion to also include the letter of intent.
Just to be safe.
That's another motion?
Okay,
Okay,
I'll just amend it.
Or amend.
or amend? Okay, I'll amend the motion to add that, please.
Okay, the motion has been amended. Second,
Second.
all those in favor of the amended motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimously approved, so, and we need a motion for the warning, to post a warning? Is that what?
So they needed to approve and adopt the resolution, the warning, and the ballot that we're gonna do. So now that
Goodness.
that's approved, I can advertise in the paper, post it around the village, and,
So you're all set?
yeah,
You need another motion?
no,
Okay.
What?
To do the legal part of it is more difficult sometimes. Thank you, Diane, for being here.
thank
Yeah,
you.
right. Keep us on the right track, so. Okay, item number 10, this is a biggie, village manager update. I need this, because I haven't been to the last 2 meetings.
Well,
so-
the others were biggies, but I want to remind you, Mr. President, we met last week,
Yeah.
so. One is just a reminder update, because we can't, in my opinion, get this out enough. Our wastewater treatment facility upgrade, we just talked about it for the bond. The important dates to remember once again at our wastewater treatment facility, open houses, 33 North Street, Saturday, October 14th at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., Thursday, October 19th, 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and 6 p.m. The public forum here, informational meeting will be on Monday, October 30th, and then, of course, we will have a bond vote here on November 7th. We will get a full breakdown of cost at the public forum in terms of what that looks like and those calculations. We do have, and I think, Neil, you were not here for that, we have a UVM intern that was assigned to our project from one of Corey Parent's classes at UVM. And she is doing the informational flyer for these open houses, and that draft will be in on Wednesday. We'll have it posted by the end of the week.
Oh,
So, spread the word, open house, hopefully we'll get some, because it's one of those things where you have to see it in person to
yeah.
understand exactly what we're trying to accomplish with the upgrade, so.
Bill, we talked at the last meeting about the centrifuge
Yes.
being the focus. Can you explain what the centrifuge is?
I can, I don't know if it's the entire focus, but it's what causes us to de-water our sludge. And right now it is, I will say, barely functional. So the centrifuge and controls added about $1 million to the cost. We anticipate roughly, I don't have absolute numbers in front of me, but roughly an $8 million project. Again, as a reminder, by the time we put a shovel in the ground, it's a 30-year-old facility. And essentially, it's a dual purpose. It is to upgrade aging equipment and improve our methodology. We were meeting new state phosphorus standards, but we keep increasing chemicals to do that, and it's expensive. So this will reduce chemicals, improve Lake Champlain, improve the function of our wastewater treatment facility. Does not improve capacity, that's still 900,000 a day, and we still operate well under that.
And one thing with Aldrich and Elliott that I would talk about, there are other technologies to de-water other than using, spinning a centrifuge. There's pressing, there's heat, there's pressure. Maybe we should, if we're thinking about replacing or upgrading the centrifuge, maybe there's a technology that's more appropriate. As far as I know, we're the only one that uses that technology.
It could be. I can only talk about what I've been privy to over the last 9 months that I've been here, but I know that they're the engineer of record for the project, and their recommendation is to go ahead and
To go with the centrifuge, stay with the centrifuge. Okay.
Yes.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
You know what a centrifuge does?
And with our system, that might be the only thing that works with our system. A different technology might be available, but for a different treatment system.
I just think it's worth just at least documenting that we asked.
Sure. Yeah, I can have that follow-up discussion with it.
Yeah.
And I might add, Bill, to what you had said to me, that this upgrade is necessary, but it's not getting any cheaper. 10 years ago, we could have done a fix for $1 million, and that same fix now is $10 million. So now is a real good time to get this job done on the infrastructure.
So to clarify, yes, to remove the built-up sludge from our two 15-acre lagoons, primarily the right side, right? The left side doesn't get nearly the sludge buildup. We could have taken care of the sludge on the right side of the lagoons about 10 years ago for roughly $1 million. To remove the sludge now is going to cost around $10 million. We just got approved by the state of Vermont. It's something we have to put on our radar, we have to think about. We will not have to activate that plan for 10 or 15 years.
No.
But it is something in future years we should talk about ensuring that we set aside money annually for that very purpose.
Good point.
Are they advocating a new liner too?
When we do, that's part of the $10 million, when we do remove the lagoon, part of that plan is to install a new liner on both sides. Yeah. And I should point out, and we'll present this in detail on the 30th, but for those that are listening in, we anticipate, getting bond authority for a certain amount, and while there's no guarantee, it looks like almost a certainty that what we'll have to go out and borrow is around $5 million, a little under 4.9 million. 20 years, 2%. That's what it looks like at this point. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay,
Good. Due to grants and loan
Right.
forgiveness.
Right.
Okay.
That's really good.
Good.
All right. I'm going to pass around, and we will put these on our website because they are public. You heard me talk about shortly after the flood of July, Governor Scott ordered all dams in the state of Vermont to be rapid inspection. So that's a rapid inspection report for the two dams we own. Of course, not the FERC controlled, so not our hydroelectric, Lower Swanton Dam and Fairfield Dam. And both of those continue to be in fair condition, and inspections did not identify any due deficiencies. So those are just for your perusal. Diane, I will send them to you so we can include them as public documents on our website. The next one I'm going to send around is just an overview map of our Foundry Street boat access. So we're starting to have some problems here with overnight campers that are popping up and trespassers. So we do, I think we have an appropriate ordinance at this point, Diane, I think. And
It's included in our parks ordinance.
it's Goose Point, correct? Foundry Street is also known as Goose Point.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we're okay there. I bring it up only for the fact that I want people to be educated on the fact that there is no overnight camping, there's no fires. We're a little remiss. I drove down there as recently as this afternoon. We gotta do a better job of signage. The stuff that's there is old, not readable, so we're gonna order some signs that say no overnight camping. We probably should enhance other parks as well. We ought to do one on McQuam Shore, we ought to post one there as you drive in, we ought to do one on Marble Mill as well.
If you will, if you don't.
So we'll order 4 or 5 signs to make sure that that's clear. But Chief Sullivan's team is on it. They just, again, they would appreciate the additional signage so that when you go down there and explain it to people, you know, let's face it, they're not gonna take the time to come in and read an ordinance, so
No.
we gotta do a better job with some signage.
Now, this time of year, it doesn't bother me. My house is right across the river. Sometimes it does in the springtime, and sometimes in the wintertime. A lot of snowmobiles,
Yes,
bikes, all kinds of things that go there.
yeah.
It hasn't been that bad recently, but keep in mind that my hearing's not so good. Other people would not agree with it.
And, well, there is that ongoing issue of, do we do anything to enhance our ability to install cameras and capture images of said trespassers at various locations that we have?
It's not that expensive.
It's not, we just gotta explore a solution that's gonna work, and then make sure people know. And, you know, when we put them there, we don't want it to be a surprise, we want it to be a deterrence. We'll post 24-hour surveillance and motion activated and
Give the kids something else.
go from there. So we are reviewing that as well.
Good.
The last thing I have prior to executive session is just an update on 124 First Street. We appeared at the DRB on Thursday evening, and that essentially was for approval of our site plan and 2 variances off 2 different streets. We were denied, so we had a meeting at 9:30 this morning with the architect and the civil engineer, and we believe that we have a solution with making the building longer. So that does a couple of things. That prevents us from keeping the space out front in the event that somebody someday said, hey, we ought to put rescue over there. It's gonna eliminate that possibility. We certainly want to keep Elm Street. We need to keep the swale that's in between the 2 properties, because that's how we're gonna meet our stormwater retention and our 3-acre rule. So we're a little bit back to the drawing board. We go back, we have till Thursday to apply, file the permit, and we're back in on October 26th. So that's kind of the state of the state there. As much as I believe in the public, there is a belief that we have a finite drilled down dollar cost on this project. We do not. It's not for the public safety building or for here. So REARC was at a meeting with me last week on Thursday here in this very room. They believe by mid-November they can have a cost that we can then internally talk about and bring to the public. But that drill down cost does not exist right now.
Where did this information come from? You don't know?
You mean, where did this misinformation come from?
Yes.
I don't know. You just hear it around town and you hear things being thrown out. It's various numbers and they're off the mark.
I would suggest that people ask us.
Agreed.
Yes,
You wanna know?
yeah.
May
So-
not hard to reach at all.
The game plan is, you know, we talked about wastewater. By the middle of November, we should, maybe as late as December 1st, but we should by December 1st have an idea of what the March bond is gonna be. And then we will have what I would suggest is not one informational meeting,
That's several.
at least 4, with identified dates, times, different times of day, and then double or triple the amount of open houses. And then, of course, I consider every day here an open house, and we see it. We've all given various tours already of what we're trying to accomplish, and it's just gonna be helpful when we have a dollar amount, so we can talk about what that impact's gonna be. That's all I have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have anything to add? I have one thing that I'd like to add. I was downtown Swanton this weekend, and I had a request from one of the merchants to, on our new improved website, both the town and the village, if it would be possible to list the local businesses on our website. And I said, I don't see a problem with that, but you've got to ask somebody. So they said, well, we're asking you.
But there's like over 200 of them.
So.
Well, that was my comment. The chamber is revamping their website.
Right.
Um,
And I said,
and it's
look,
going to be a lot better. So we just need a little bit of time. I think we're probably 4 to 6 weeks away from unveiling it.
Yeah.
So, but
and I told this
that's,
person, I said, Chamber usually has all that information
yeah,
if you want to.
we have all that
And
information
then the villages and towns website would have a link to the chambers.
and vice
Yeah.
There's
versa.
a
You
link,
know?
Yep,
there's a
So-
link to his,
Yeah.
or theirs.
yep.
So it's,
It's
like,
almost there,
it's there, but you've got to look for it,
right.
so.
It's
Yeah.
easier to ask you.
Yeah, ask me.
But, yeah, I would say, you know, before Thanksgiving, we're gonna be up and running, so.
Well, that's just fine.
Good.
That's
Good.
good.
Yeah, well, we're looking for, it's gonna be a
Okay,
really nice
so
website.
that's all I have. Anybody else? So,
I just wanted one quickie. The artwork down at the
beach.
beach is very nice.
It's awesome, isn't it?
It's
Turned out great.
appropriate
Yeah.
and it's really nice.
Yes,
Kudos to everybody
they did a
for
great job.
making
Yeah,
that happen.
I just wanna put that on the record, that, when they came and talked about that, they did a nice job.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Now, we just gotta keep people from not vandalizing it.
So,
We're also planning for flags for veterans come for Veterans Day,
uh-huh.
so.
That's my only comment, Mr. President.
Okay, that being said, I think we have a request to go into executive session to discuss customer accounts, personnel, and real estate. Okay, so do we have a
So
motion?
moved.
And a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Motion and a second to go into executive session. All over, no discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, okay. The motion's carried. We are in executive session.